I'm someone that's constantly dreaming, and I think that the bigger your dreams, like the bigger the responsibility to kind of go after them.
Thank you, Corey, so much for agreeing to talk with me. And I think there's different aspects of your life that I want to talk to you about,
Yeah.
partly as a photographer and also as a gallery owner, which sounds like it's
Hmm.
been something that's in flux and you're working with.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
definitely.
Let's talk about photography. Let's start with
Okay,
that.
sounds
So,
good.
when did you first start taking photographs?
My earliest memory of taking photographs is from about the age of 6 or 7. I remember getting a point and shoot film camera from my parents for Christmas, and I can remember the excitement of getting those images back and then wanting to take more photos. And um, I've kind of gone through phases where I haven't really taken many photos. Throughout my teen years, I documented a lot of my kind of everyday life, and then got into more of kind of commercial stuff through church. There was a lot of opportunities for shooting people's weddings and helping out with businesses that wanted some photos taken of their food or whatnot. So I kind of got known around my church as like the photography person. So that presented lots of opportunities as far as kind of development, learning my individual style.
So, what would you say is your individual style?
I think now it's kind of changed somewhat. I've always shot on film. Well, not always. I have shot on digital, especially when I was doing more commercial stuff. But I think my individual style these days would be very natural light. I tend to shoot for projects and for exhibitions. I don't tend to do so much kind of personal or commercial work anymore, other than exhibition work. So I think it's very body driven as far as creating a body of work. So there's a large story component to it that I'm trying to convey a story that is kind of deeply personal, but also kind of universal life and death and kind of spirituality that is evolving, that's expansive, that's inclusive. Yeah.
So, I think we first connected around Scott's photos.
Yeah.
So, I'm really curious to know what you have to say around photos of people in nature, because I think that you have a very similar
Yeah.
interest in that. And I'd like to hear more about that.
For sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed your episode with Scott and his perspective on how and why he shoots. I think we probably come from very similar places in that respect, as far as being comfortable shooting ourselves in nature, and being naked in front of a camera as a man and as an artist. I think is really important, especially as someone that does photograph other people, being aware of what that feels like, as you were speaking about with your experiences being in front of the camera as well, and how that changes the dynamic, and it gives you a greater awareness of what that the person that you're photographing is going through and experiencing,
It's
especially as
really
someone
hard,
that's
Corey. Like, I have to tell you, like, it's horrifying to see pictures of myself. I don't know how you can relate to that, but I saw pictures and I thought, no, this is really, this is really awful.
yeah. uh, I don't know if I found it awful. I think because I'm so invested in my own process, so it's more of seeing something of myself come to life, or yeah, not necessarily. I think when I'm actually taking photographs of myself, I'm maybe a bit more removed from the situation, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
in a weird way, it's very subjective. So when I'm looking at photographs of myself that I've taken, I'm not actually kind of really sensing that that's me. in the photographs. It's a weird kind of distance of, yes, being the subject matter, but also kind of, I think most of my photographs, I'm trying to withdraw into the environment. So I just see it as kind of one expansive environment rather than like myself being put on a pedestal or exposed in that respect. For some people, that wouldn't really make sense because it's, someone that's naked in a photograph.
I wasn't able to quite get to that level of abstraction and leave myself outside of the photo, but I appreciate that you could do that, and it's super interesting. So what are some of the themes that you think you're exploring through that work when you're taking photos of yourself in nature?
I think most of my photographs kind of explore life and death, generally in environments that are quite rugged. Australia's a kind of rugged wilderness with not much kind of subtlety or kind of soft edges, really. So I tend to find myself in sparse or rugged environments that kind of a testing of my own endurance, whether it's hot or cold. The water around here is quite cold, and I tend to shoot in water quite a bit. It seems to be a recurring theme through my work. I think shooting is a way of expressing spirituality for me, kind of growing up in the Christian church and kind of making sense of where I'm at with that, and exploring themes around baptism, around what it means to be human and divine. I think they're kind of exploring like the bigger questions for me rather than just kind of looking at the surface of things. I want to be interrogating what I believe, and also being someone that is interrogating the institution of the church, like what it means to be a Christian and what it means to be spiritual, and explore those things that it's not necessarily something that the church agrees with, if that makes sense. Like shooting nudes is quite controversial, I find, in this day and age, in kind of the church culture that I grew up in. I grew up with purity culture and the kind of maybe a bit more of the Greek philosophical kind of notion of like the body and the spirit are completely separate things, and the body is bad and we want to attain the spiritual aspect. So I come from a point of view that the body and the spirit, they're meant to be one, and that both are equally divine. So why would the body be bad but the spirit be good, and all that kind of stuff. So I will kind of want to, I guess, poke at that idea that the body and our human desires and needs are bad, because I think they're divine and good.
So where does that come from? So you say that's a little bit of a difference from how you're brought up and the church's perspective on that. Where does that come from for you to say, like, oh, the body is actually good?
I think it comes mostly probably from my childhood. Like my parents are really open, and I think I was just born a bit of a nudist. So I don't think my parents could really keep my clothes on me as a kid, much to their annoyance. So I think part of it comes from just this innate understanding of like there's nothing wrong with like who I am, as a person and as a physical body. And part of it, I think, is a wanting to question everything. I don't like I probably going deeper on the spiritual side than I was expecting to go, but my kind of first experiences of the church were very culty, so very restrictive, and the ways in which we were taught was very kind of exclusive and enclosed. And as I came out of that experience as a teenager, you begin to question things, and so then everything was on the table then for questioning. So it's kind of the catalyst to go from a non-Christian environment to go to something kind of on the extreme side of things, to then kind of progress from that and be challenged by the questions and trying to make sense of things. And I haven't really lost that kind of questioning edge. Like I think, like, if I'm going to be a Christian, then the God that I believe in has to be an expansive God. Like he can't be smaller than my questions, if that makes sense.
So can you tell me a little bit more about your work as a gallerist?
Yeah. So I started Hue and Cry with 6 friends. We're all artists, and we're looking for a space to kind of create. And that we started in August of 2020 in the middle of lockdowns and all the chaos that was Melbourne and Australia and the world, really. I think we'd just come out of a lockdown, and I thought maybe that would have been the end of them. So it kind of felt like a green light, but we had to face a lot of challenges as far as in and out of lockdowns and changing restrictions constantly. So I think at some point they were changing daily or weekly, with heavy restrictions on how many people we could have in buildings and whatnot, which made it really challenging as far as getting people in to see works, and also just kind of the stress of having to be open to kind of get by as well, as because we just started, so we're still building a customer and a kind of following. And at the start of the year, my business partners decided to pull out of the business, mostly just because we've been working for 2.5 years and we haven't made any money off of the business. It's like we've gotten by, but we haven't kind of paid any of ourselves a wage or anything like that. So it's been a real challenge in that respect. We all work full time as well outside of the gallery in different jobs and also our practice as well. So it's been an experience that's been quite challenging, but rewarding in a sense that we've been able to create something that lots of people in the community and in kind of the greater Geelong area have needed, as far as a gallery that's willing to put it on emerging artists that might not necessarily have the commercial backing or commercial success. We've kind of wanted to stay true to our intentions of being a gallery that isn't necessarily about being a commercial success and making money off of art, if that makes sense. As much as we need to make money to get by, we never chose artists or exhibitors to show based on their ability to make money for the gallery. It was always more about the work than the kind of commercial viability of an exhibition.
So what would you look for if somebody was wanting to exhibit with you?
I look for definitely a body of work that has a story or has some deeper meaning. So, we get a lot of applications that it's just, we just want to show some works, and that doesn't really speak to me as far as a gallery owner. I want to kind of have someone that's willing to ask the questions, to interrogate themes, and to kind of explore the deeper ideas in life, like just like I do essentially. So it's really great when we get applications beyond the norm.
What would the norm be for you?
I think the norm is just, I like making art and I think it's good, so I want to kind of have a show. I think that there's a tendency in maybe it's just Geelong, I'm not too sure. And maybe it's like a post-COVID thing as well. Like lots of people have kind of had that time to get back into doing art, and they're still exploring lots of mediums and lots of experiences and expressions, and maybe draw heavily on like Pinterest and what's kind of fashionable or trendy at the time. Yeah, I'd rather have exhibitions that people that are not necessarily really experienced in their practice, but that are exploring something rather than just I like doing art or I like painting. So
It's interesting. That's a tough one because there's a part of me that wants to say, I want to encourage people to make art, like just
yeah,
to explore what media they have available to them, if it's photography, if it's drawing. But I can take your point around people have to be intentional around their art.
yeah,
And you have there's something that you're going for with your gallery that you want to exhibit artists with a particular point of view or a particular strength.
yeah. I think there's lots of places that do more like interior design kind of styles, and I'd probably encourage them to look into like a place like that that's more geared towards, this looks pretty, it looks good, but it doesn't necessarily say anything too deep. Whereas I want to be a gallery that enables people to explore their self, the ideas that they have, to be political if they need to be, to kind of have a space where people can fully express themselves and not be bound by needing to be commercially accessible and have a certain kind of aesthetic.
So, how do you balance your own work against your work running the gallery?
At the moment, it's not balanced at all. So, I haven't really made any kind of work since my last exhibition in October, which part of me is itching to get out there and photograph either myself or other people and create a new body of work. I've definitely got ideas around what I want to photograph. Yeah, I think at the moment, just kind of taking over the gallery with my wife, that this is priority, and getting the gallery to a point where it's a lot more sustainable and is essentially running itself a little bit more. At the moment, we're having to do a lot of the kind of heavy lifting, a lot of kind of putting in place new processes and procedures and how we do things, and lots of organizing of all the back of house stuff, the website and social media and all that kind of stuff that takes so much time. So I think, once that's kind of a little bit more settled and we have a bit more of an understanding of what we're actually doing from the admin side of stuff, that will free me up at least to pursue more of my own work again, which I'm really looking forward to. But I love doing this as well. So I'm not too annoyed that I can't go out and photograph, because in some way curating and organizing exhibitions is now part of my creative practice.
If I were to ask you more explicitly about the idea of vulnerability, because I can see vulnerability in both aspects, both as running a gallery and as a photographer. Yeah. How would you want to talk about what vulnerability means to you?
Yeah, vulnerability. I think, both aspects. I feel quite vulnerable in photographing people and myself, generally nude, and generally people that aren't models, and people that haven't necessarily been photographed before in that way. So there's always a sense of vulnerability, at least between them and myself, or myself and the camera and the potential audience. I think how do I approach vulnerability? I think I approach it with like an openness and an understanding, especially being in front of the camera as well, like an understanding of how it would be perceived by some, and the kind of expansiveness that happens when you are in front of a camera, and someone is actually like seeing you. Yeah, I think that has really kind of been a positive experience. So I'm always willing to go to the places that feel vulnerable and sensitive and maybe painful at times. Definitely experience that as a photographer. I think as a gallery owner, it's a constant state of vulnerability, especially in this kind of, for want of a better term, market. It's kind of really weird to have to think about business in a kind of creative sense. They kind of somewhat juxtaposed and don't necessarily flow together. So thinking about business stuff and trying to make decisions that aren't based on fear is quite vulnerable, and to make decisions based on where we're going rather than like what is happening around us in the kind of commercial sense or the environment of the day-to-day kind of running of a business and needing customers and needing to make money, but also to stay true to what we want to achieve, and who we are as a gallery. Yeah, it's got a constant feeling of vulnerability. Yeah.
No, I'm impressed by that because my day job is nothing to do with art or these podcasts or anything else. So I have my day job that I pursue, and for me, it's a very separate thing from my interests. And you actually are pursuing, like, your day job is quite well aligned with, I think, your artistic interests. And I'm really impressed by, and I told Scott this, which is the only reason that I went to visit him to do pictures with him, is that he had actually put himself in that position of being photographed. And you've done that as well. And so I think that says a lot about being able to put yourself in the position of being seen.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how is it for you as far as looking at those photographs? So you put yourself in the position of being seen. You take those photographs of yourself and of other people, but also of yourself, which I think that's really hard. I mean, maybe I'm overhyping it. Like I did before, I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. Like, this was really hard for me. I don't know if it's as hard for you. Maybe it's not as hard for you.
I think maybe at the start it was difficult to be seen. And I think maybe as my body's changed as well, it's been a little bit harder. I think being seen is really important though. And so being able to be in charge of the process, and to be presented the way that I want to be presented as a photographer and as a person has been really liberating and really kind of expansive. So I really kind of enjoy that process as well, knowing that what I'm conveying is greater than myself in a sense as well. As much as they are of me, they're not necessarily of me at the same time. Like I'm kind of just using myself as a vehicle to convey something that's greater than me.
So, if I ask you, that's yourself as a photographer and then yourself as a gallery owner, is there a sense in which there's something about being seen, or either for the artist that you're representing, that they're being seen, or for you? Yeah. Is there something about you as a gallery owner that's about being seen as well?
Yeah, maybe if I explore ego a little bit, probably. Like I love running things and kind of being in that place of elevation, like not necessarily for myself, but like I love elevating people and drawing people's potential out. That's one of the great pleasures of being a gallery and studio owner, is being able to work with people and help them realize an idea, and then to celebrate them on opening nights and hopefully create an environment for them that is an awesome experience, and something that they feel really positive about. So I think in those respects, being seen does play a work in both, especially because a lot of the artists that we get hue and cry are kind of emerging. They're not necessarily established. So they're still finding their way in their expression and their audience as well. So it's a real privilege to kind of get to work with people coming up in the kind of Geelong art scene.
I have to ask where that name comes from, hue and cry, because that's great.
It was a suggestion by one of the previous business owners. We were just kind of sitting around brainstorming, and it came up, and it kind of stuck.
Very dramatic. I love it. It's like hue and
Yeah. Yeah. It wouldn't necessarily be my choice of name. Not as dramatic, maybe.
Well,
Yeah,
interesting though. You're interesting because I find that you have this, you're very serious, but there's this undercurrent of passion
yeah,
that comes out. And so I appreciate that. So I think there's a lot of hue and cry about you as well.
I think you've explained me to a T. Very serious, but very passionate at the same time. Yeah.
For your own work, where do you see that going? Where do you see yourself pushing?
I'm one to do a lot more work around mental health and exploring the challenges of that and those kind of themes. I've got an idea for an exhibition that would explore kind of masculinity and suicide, because that's a major issue in Australia. We have quite a high suicide rate, which is really unfortunate and sad. And as someone that has suffered from poor mental health throughout my life, it's definitely something that I want to kind of create conversation around and create a body of work that kind of explores that with as many people as I can to kind of represent the male experience.
Through photography?
Yeah, through photography. So essentially, I'd like to photograph the amount of male suicides that there were the year before, which at the moment it's about 2,500 a year. Australian men commit suicide. So I'd like to photograph, essentially 2,500 people, and then contact print them using cyanotype, so that there'd be a kind of just a blue portrait of themselves, and explore the idea of masculinity as the blueprint for society, but also the kind of the way in which masculinity and toxic masculinity essentially has created its own worst nightmare in that respect of like the cyanotype being the medium for blueprints, and then also the, I guess, color that's most associated with depression and feelings of sadness and loneliness.
I look forward to seeing more of your work in that.
Thank you.
I think that the world needs to see that for sure. Not just Australia, probably, but yeah.
It's been really great to kind of talk about maybe not necessarily strictly art practice, but go deeper onto the spiritual side of stuff. It's been really great. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey, for your time.
No worries, Sarah.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.